Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Made Possible by Pop Culture, the podcast. This is season 2 of the podcast where I ask my guests to come on and share those stories from pop culture's past and present that have greatly influenced them. Once again, I'm the host and producer, Danielle Terciano, but it's not really about me. It is about my individual guests. And this episode, I'm really excited to welcome MarkJoseph. He's a singer, a songwriter, a performer. He's currently on tour with the Jonas Brothers, and he took time out of that tour to hop on this podcast with me because he has a great new EP out. It's called They All Fall Down. It's available on Spotify. So we get to talk about that as well as his influences, as we always do. So enjoy, and then head over to Spotify once you're done listening here and check out his new music. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I have to say, the people who have listened to this podcast a few times, maybe not from the beginning, but at least a few times, have heard me say I'm not very knowledgeable about music. Like, I do feel like that is my one deficit in the world of pop culture because I'm very particular about the music I listen to. And so A, I'm excited to have you on to talk about music and maybe learn something, but B, I'm excited to have you on because from what I understand, a lot of your influences are people that I like as well, but I feel like you must have come to them differently because you are younger than me and you're also an artist yourself. So you're probably listening for different things. Do you feel like do you feel like that's true? Do you feel like even from when you were little and you would turn on the radio or listen to a CD or whatever medium of choice it was at the time, do you feel like you were like trying to mimic anybody or trying to like take lessons from anybody?
Yeah, that's like what made me fall in love with Beyoncé, just like her vocal ability. And she would do things that my brain couldn't comprehend. I was like, how does she come up with that? Like, I feel like she's a genius vocalist, and that's like what drew me to her initially. And then I would see the videos, and then I'd be like, this is not fair. Like, you sound that good, and you performed that well. It was just like, there was nobody like that for me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's what I would listen for, though. That's what I listen to vocalists for. I want to like learn their tricks and like add new tricks to my arsenal. She was just this like woman with all these tricks. So every time she came out with the song, I'd be like, okay, what is she gonna do now? Like, it's just exciting to listen to her. That's how I would listen to her.
Walk us back a little bit. Like, do you remember the first time you heard her? Was it Destiny's Child era Beyonce? Was she already a solo artist? Like, do you remember the moment?
It was Destiny's Child. In like 97 and 98. I was like 5 or 6. But I was like, oh, this is so cool. And like, all the hits, loved it. But it was when I was 11. I think I was 11 when her first album came out. And I was like staying with my older sister who was in college at the time because I went to summer camp in Springfield, Mass, where she was going to school. And I had like my CD, my Walkman, whatever, and was listening to Dangerously in Love. And I just kept rewinding this one part. I was like, oh, she's singing this so well. Like, and I just got lost in that song. And I was like, wow, I love this woman. Like, that was the moment, the core memory of like when I like fell in love with her artistry.
What moment what were you rewinding? What piece? Do you remember?
Dangerously in Love. It was like an ad lib towards the end. Like the chorus is going and she's like singing her heart out and just like, she's like, I can't do this thing without you. Like, I don't know. It's so like basic now that I think of it, but my 11-year-old brain was like, oh my God, the emotion.
I was just gonna say, first of all, when you're a kid, I think like it might have been maybe the first time you heard something sound like that.
Yeah.
And that also might make it the core memory, right? Like it's different to you at that point. But you pointed out something really I thought interesting was you started listening to her when you were like 5 or 6. Now, then it's, 5 or 6 years later, she has this solo album and you're like really starting to see a different side of her as an artist. Where were you in your artist journey at that point? Like, did you already know that you wanted to do this professionally?
Yeah, I always wanted to sing. I was like so young, so I was in elementary school or middle school. Um, So I was nowhere near where I am now. I just knew that singing was my passion and that's what I wanted to do one day. And I was just in like sponge mode and just like absorbing everything I could from the singers and artists that I love.
Hmm. It's interesting to hear you say sponge mode because I used the word mimic a minute earlier, and I think mimic is unfair. I just used it because like that's what I used to try to do. Like I have no sense of rhythm. I cannot carry a tune, but I would try to like match whatever I heard that I liked, and it was always bad. When you when you are absorbing everything, what do you feel like you are absorbing, like a style of music that you wanted to jump into as an artist yourself, or were you also like, do you feel like you were realizing, okay, I don't want to just be the singer. I also want to write the music and, maybe even choreograph the dances or direct the music videos. Like what level do you feel like you were at that young
Absorbing.
age?
I think I was mimicking.
Mm,
Like, I think that was the right word. Like, I was just trying to do what she does. And I feel like her voice is really agile. Like, she can
yeah.
just do a lot of things. And I feel like my voice developed into a voice that is agile because she was like one of my like early teachers. And she was teaching me, I was being taught by her by mimicking
Mm,
everything I thought was cool. So that's how I was absorbing back then. Then I got older and I was like, wow, she's such a boss. Wow, she
mm.
has her hand in everything that relates to her artistry, like the fashion, the colors, the choreography. Um, I just respect her as a businesswoman too. So that came later.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess, I mean, I don't want to jump too far ahead, but I am curious about like how far later, and like do you feel like from her first solo album to a more recent album, did it change and I don't want to put words in your mouth as to which recent album, but do you feel like it changed your own trajectory at all?
I would say I would say Beyonce played the game, like the pop game, from album one to album three. Album three was I Am Sasha Fierce. When she got to her fourth album, which she named Four, that's when she says herself, like, I stopped caring about charting. Like, I just wanted to do music that I loved and for the love of music. And that inspired me because, and I don't want to jump ahead either, but like same with Bruno, I feel like
Sure, yeah, yeah.
some artists just do what they want to do and they're not really following any rules. And I'm so inspired by that. Like even with my project dropping, I don't feel like I followed any rules. I just wanted to do what felt good and sounded good to me, and hopefully people like it. And that is when Beyonce started doing that, was her fourth album. And I feel like she still does that.
Hmm.
And yeah, that just inspired me to like say F the rules and just do what I want to do.
It's an interesting point too, because like I think you could take that musically and you can say, I don't care about the rules of a certain genre. I'm going to mix things and I want to do what I want to do. But you can also take it from the business standpoint and say, like, I don't want to sign with a certain label because they don't give the artist respect or give the artist the right points and the right money and all of that. How do you feel about that today? Like in the business, on the business side of things,
Mhm.
do you feel like you want to do your own, I'm going to use the word empire. You can correct me
Uh-huh.
if you don't want to, but do you feel like you want to build your own empire in a sense, or are you aspiring to
Be
join a
signed.
label that you've loved?
Everyone says like you make so much more money when you're independent because there are way less middlemen to pay, and it
Mm-hmm.
makes a lot of sense. I think there are pros and cons. I think you make more money when you're independent, but it's so much harder
Mm.
because you have to come out of pocket and you just have less help. But I think if I had the right deal, if I could like negotiate the right deal, I would be happy to sign it because who wouldn't want like a monster backing them? If it's a good deal, like that's amazing.
I don't know.
The
You just use the word monster. To me, that doesn't sound great.
like a machine, sorry, a machine. That's what I meant. Okay, a machine backing them. Like the hard part is getting a good deal because I feel like it's a business, so they're trying to get, you know, as much as they can out of you. So I don't know. I think, yeah, I think that's my answer. if I could come to a good agreement with the label, I'd be happy to sign. If I was killing it independent, I would take my time. I wouldn't rush into a label because, like I said, that's where you're making most of your money. You're not paying anyone back. You're not paying these people for helping you. Like you're paying your small team.
And at the same time, you have complete creative freedom over what you're releasing. So
Yes.
yeah, I think there is a little bit more of work on your shoulders because like you're marketing it yourself maybe, or you're paying someone else to market it, but maybe the pockets aren't as deep. But you get to make the music you want. You get to put the message out you want. Like I think of all of these artists. I mean, even I'm sure Beyonce, like when she first started, there were things that she couldn't control.
So many artists, like, and you can see it like when an artist first starts out, like a really successful artist of today, if you jump back to their like debut, a lot of times they're so different than where they are now. And Pink is the perfect example. Do you remember when Pink came out?
Yes.
She was like,
I will say I first saw Pink opening for NSYNC on concert at a concert. So
wow,
like that's how
jealous.
old I am.
I was there with you. I might have been like 7, but I was
Yeah, I was like,
there
you were young, you were just there.
because I'm like the baby of my family. So like I grew up in the 90s around like teenagers, like my cousins and my sister. So I was listening to all that stuff. That's so part of my influence. But yeah, Pink was like this like roundaway girl. Like they made her sound like I mean, she might be from the hood, but like she was like blue-eyed soul.
Hmm. I remember she had some tough stuff in her childhood, and they just
Yeah.
really leaned into it hard in that first album. And
Yeah, like
I don't know, if like she wanted to or not.
I don't think she did. So when an album or two later, she started doing the pop rock thing, and then she was like, "This is like what I want to do." But the label wanted to push me as this, which she also killed it as the
Mm.
label. And I'm not; they weren't wrong. I mean, it sold, and she did amazing. But yeah, it's interesting to see the trajectory of some artists because just to back up what you were saying about the freedom, the creative freedom
Hmm.
that you have when you're independent. Yeah. Also, I wanted to add Beyonce. Uh, she doesn't follow any rules anymore, and like I think the biggest statement that she made was when she dropped her self-titled album with no promotion.
Hmm.
She just dropped the day of. She was like surprised, and it was like hit number 1. And she dropped an album on a Friday, and everyone was doing Tuesdays. And she changed like the whole game. Not everything's Friday, like New Music Friday on Spotify. I didn't
Yeah,
realize till
except
later that.
I don't think that many people could have gotten away with that. Like she was
Yeah,
already at a certain level when she did that. And I feel like a lot of artists, if they had tried, they their album would have had crickets. You know what I mean? You could
yeah,
drop an album with no promotion and then no one knows it's there. I will
yeah,
say, even, as I come from the world of journalism, and like music journalists are so salty about no advance notice because then they have to get up in the middle of the night as a surprise to listen to an
yeah.
album to churn out a review, a coherent, thoughtful review at 2 in the morning. It's like not if you're not a music journalist who works on the hours of most musicians, it's not a good gig. But at the
Yeah.
same time, like, yeah, I mean, she was in such a great position to change things. And I'm sorry, but like, I don't know why we weren't releasing music on Fridays so that we could all have the weekend to go and enjoy it.
Yeah, it kind of makes sense.
Yeah, I think so. I do want to, like I said, I don't want to jump ahead too much, but I do want to talk about, obviously, you already teased it. I teased it in my intro, your EP, because you've released a few of the songs as singles first and then
Mhm.
put together this great EP. I want to talk a little bit about the inspirations behind the individual singles. Were there specific, like, for example, Red Flag, which is one of my favorite songs off the album. Were there
Thank you.
specific things, like a specific moment in your life that inspired that, or were you leaning more on musical inspirations to kind of set up the tone and the message?
More so music inspiration, but it turned into real life like after I wrote it. Which is hilarious how that works. But yeah, like I'm Haitian, Caribbean, so I grew up listening to like all of these dance hall, soca, reggae type of songs. And one of my favorites is Red Wine. red, red wine. So I always wanted to like find a like clever way to sample it. So that's where Red Flag came in. And that's how that song was born.
Hmm. I wasn't fishing for the singing, but I do like that you pepper this interview with singing. It
It's so bad.
it's
It's
no, it's such
so
a I mean it's great and it's a great I think it's a great I'm gonna call it an anthem because there are some lines in there that I'm like I will be quoting those in my daily life. You know, and I don't know that I should spoil it for the audience. Everyone should go get it, but not just that song. I mean, you released a couple of them as singles. So what inspired the I don't know if you would call it this. Like I think of if you're dropping a few singles first, it's almost a teaser for the ultimate for the album. But I'm
Mhm.
curious about what inspired the choice of singles, like how you came to which ones you wanted to lead with before you dropped the full EP.
Okay. Villain was the lead single, and I'm always like writing about love and stuff like that. So like I hadn't released music in a while, so I was like, it's such a like high energy anthemic song, and I was like, I feel like this will be really interesting for people who are into my music to hear like this different side of me and this different perspective. And it's really relatable. I think it's a universal feeling. Um, so that's why I wanted to lead with that song. Know Us. I've been sitting on that song for literally like 10 years.
Oh wow.
I wrote it when I was really young about a crush I had on a friend in college. And a lot of people who know that song behind closed doors love it. So I was like, okay, this would be a fun, like, little pop moment for the second single. And then Red Flag, I was like, let's do something dancey.
Mm.
Uh, I don't do a lot of up tempo music, so it's something I'm trying to change. But
Mm.
anywho, yeah, I just wanted to like release singles that were interesting and
Yeah.
not like my usual vibe, which is like sad boy in the feelings, guitar, slow. Like I just wanted to switch it up for the singles and leave all the like other stuff for you to listen when you listen to the whole project. The stuff that's like more expected weren't singles.
I also like the idea of, you know, you're not sure what you're going to get necessarily. Like you are a well-rounded artist. So like, let's show you that. Let's not just lead with the same type of music in every song in the singles, right? Like you got to show your different sides to get people in the door, I think, to buy the album or
Mhm.
stream the album. I don't know if people even buy music anymore. Like I do, because again, I'm old, but I've
It's
been
an
told that
option.
everyone's just like listen to it on Spotify. And I'm like, okay, great. I'm sure that's super helpful for you.
It's an option. I don't know why, because I don't feel like people I don't even know how they count it these days. I think it's by streams and buying. I don't know. It's confusing.
Yeah, yeah. When I did talk or ask you about musical inspirations on that single, I was also thinking just like in general your modern day inspirations today, because I know you mentioned Bruno Mars a few minutes ago. Do you feel like there are people that you loved listening to growing up that you felt like were influential then that you feel like are no longer as influential now because you're making a certain type of music, and so now you're looking at other artists to say like, well, either what are you doing that I can challenge myself to do, or you know, what are you doing that I don't want to do, sort of thing.
No, actually, like all of my influences like have stayed with me. It's kind of strange. Like I have so many influences, like from Boys to Men to Celine Dion to Brandy to Beyonce to Bruno Mars to Pink. They all stay with me, and I'm just like a melting pot. And sometimes I'll like pull out the Brandy influence when I'm like doing my background vocals because I love how she does background vocals. Sometimes I'll pull out the Boys to Men influence when I'm like ad-libbing and like I need to be really emotive because that's what I love about them. Beyonce is always there. She's always there. Pink, if I'm doing like a pop rock moment, like that's who I like channel. Like I channel Who Knew by Pink. I love that song. Um Celine Dion, if I'm belting like a long note, I think of Celine Dion. So like I don't know, I just hold all of them. They're always like part of me when I'm creating music.
Where does Bruno Mars fit in for you today? Because I know you mentioned him a minute ago, and like he's got a pretty big catalog as well, obviously.
Yeah, I love his writing. I love his writing, so I try to channel that. Like Talking to the Moon is a song I love from him. Um, I love his performance. I just saw him for the first time. I don't know what took me so long. Like last week in LA, and I was like crying, so embarrassing. But it was just I forgot how much I loved him. But like he comes from a wedding singing background, which I also do too. So it's just cool to see him like throw that into his performance style. He's such a front man. Like he doesn't just stand there and sing. Like he's a singer first, but he just will throw in some slick moves here and there, like choreography with his whole band. It's just very like wedding bandy, but like not corny, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. So I just, I mean, yeah, also like I think he's the best male vocalist I've ever heard in the flesh, hands down.
I mean, I
But
will say, I feel like a lot of the people that you were just calling out, none of them just stand there and sing, really. Like they're all really incorporate artistry both in their music, but as performers on stage or in their videos or wherever you might see them, which to me sets a different bar for you as an artist, I guess, if those are your influences, because I don't know, there used to be a time where like it was enough to just like sing really well, but now it feels like you're putting on a show above and beyond.
yeah,
Do
it's
you feel a
entertaining.
pressure? Like what does that feel like when you do live shows?
Yeah, there is pressure because look at the material. Like I'm like these are the people I want to be like. I always feel pressure to make sure people feel entertained because that's like why I love these people. Um, Beyoncé, she's an entertainer. She's not just sitting there singing. Um, Takes a lot of rehearsal. I love rehearsing.
You've been on tour with the Jonas Brothers for a while, so like it's not like I'm not trying to say this is new to you at all, but I
Right.
imagine that like when it is your show, it's a different feeling too. Like it's again what we're talking about, the control, the creativity, but also like there's a different sense of ownership over what you're doing. And I mean, maybe that's a good feeling. I feel like for me, I'd be stressed out all the time, but I mean, what I'm really asking here is how do you want it to compare? Do you think it's fair to try to compare? Or is it like, well, I'm doing my own thing, they're doing their own thing, just treat them as their own things?
Treat them like their own thing, but also like I'll throw like some moves in here and there sometimes. Um, I'm not like Chris Brown or anything, but
That's
I
good. You
do.
shouldn't feel like Chris Brown. He's not a great person. I know what you meant, but I just needed to say that.
Yeah, like I just that's the best way I can describe it. I'll sprinkle some moves in there just to keep people entertained. I like storytelling during my
Mm.
shows. Just like anything I could do that's not singing only, I'll try to like sprinkle in there just to keep people engaged.
I don't want to use I'll use the word stan. I don't want to use the word stan because it's not a verb, whatever. But I mean that to me is such a part of this culture now where like when they come to your shows, it's not just about you're entertaining them, you're engaging them, but at a certain point, like they know everything you're gonna do. They know all your dance moves, they've studied all your work, they know all your songs, they're singing it back to you. What is your feeling on like the element of surprising that type of audience? Do you feel like you always have to keep them on their toes, or do you feel like that is the win when they know everything about you? That is a win.
That's a great question. Ah, because I like going to shows and like knowing what to expect, like and doing the choreography with the person in the audience. So there's the beauty with that. But I think the element of surprise is also dope. I think I can't say that word right now. Just
Familiarity.
yeah, familiarity. And like I think that's beautiful. And then like sprinkling some surprise in there every now and then when they don't expect it. I like that.
And how
Like
much,
when the special guest comes out on Beyonce's show, I'm like, like no one expects that. Like that's cool.
yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. Like how much of it is really like about what you choose to sing at that particular show, or like bringing someone out that they don't expect, or like,
Mhm.
what would you say is the hardest part about planning your own show versus performing on tour?
Right now, it would be like finding time to rehearse
Mm-mm.
because my schedule is so hectic. Like we're doing the show with no rehearsal. Um, but I'm so used to like the pressure of it all because of tour. So I'm just gonna rock and roll it like we do here. Um, Finding out what to wear because I don't like
Yes.
shopping, but I have help for the first time. My friends are like styling me like properly, and I'm like, wow, this is great. Not having to think about that. Um, what
How
else?
many, can you say how many changes you have? Do you have multiple changes?
I wanted to do something like that, but I only have one outfit.
Okay. It's
But
okay. You don't
she came
have
up
to
with
do that.
20, she came up with 22 looks just for me to choose from. She was like, I'm so sorry. Like I went overboard. I'm like, this is great. I would never.
It's great
Um,
because it's also, you can hold on to the ones you like for the next one. Like you don't have to use them all on your first show, like of the album release.
yeah. Um, Figuring out different arrangements, like how to like make it different than last time. That's something that's tricky. Yeah. But I kept it simple this time. I don't have a band. I just have one guy on piano pressing the space bar on the laptop, and it's gonna be tracks just because I don't have time to rehearse with a full band and all that. This
It
time
makes
around.
sense. That is something I find fascinating too. Like, I feel like a lot of my friends who write creatively, they do it when they're in a different, they either do it as their full-time job, or they do it as like a completely separate thing because their full-time job is just so out of left field that has nothing to do with writing. It's nothing to do with creativity. They need that outlet. And
Yeah,
so for you, as someone who is in a creative space performing on tour professionally anyway, to then have to pivot and do that for yourself, how do you make the time, A, and B, like what do you need to get in the right zone to switch out of like I'm on their tour mode and I'm doing something for them versus now I have to sit down and focus on what I want? Like, do you have a ritual? Is there something you do to kind of switch gears?
sleep. Um, it's a lot of work. It's very exhausting, but yeah, I just can't help it. I'm There's a quote that was like, I write because I have to, like not because I want to, or something like that. And that's just how I feel with creating music. I can't help but to do it.
Mm.
So it doesn't take much for me to switch gears. Literally, I think sleep is the biggest thing because it's just really exhausting because I'm on tour, and then I get off of tour, and even if I get a physical break, like I don't have to be anywhere. I don't have a mental break a lot of times
Mm.
because I'm thinking about all my stuff. Um, and some of my like bandmates, they're like, I don't know how you do this, but like I don't know, I'm always exhausted. I feel like because my mind and body rarely gets a break. Has really gotten a break in the last like 2 years. Um,
Yeah.
so sleep.
Yeah. I do want to go back though, because, you were talking about Bruno Mars as like his songwriting specifically a few minutes ago, but I am curious, especially hearing you talk about performance, how much an artist like that is an influence on your performance style.
He just stays cool all the time. And that's really important on stage. Like that took me a while to understand because I'd be like watching Beyonce and like, oh, like she's dancing so hard, so I gotta like do the most, and that's actually like not cool. There are moments where it's called for and moments when you need to chill. And
Mm.
Bruno, seeing his show, he's just like cool and chill the whole time. And that's like something I picked up from him.
Yeah, it makes it seem easier than it is though. Like for all of us who can't do it, we're like, look how easy he's making it look. And then when we try and we sound and looked terrible, we're like, oh, which I mean is good for you because it makes us realize that you have a talent we don't have, but
Yeah.
it definitely doesn't make us feel great about ourselves.
It's tough, but I think that's the goal, is to make it look as effortless as possible.
I don't know. I feel like you sometimes there are artists that do themselves a disservice because if we think it looks too easy, we don't think about how much work you're putting in and what you're actually doing. And we take for granted a lot of the actual effort, not just the art, but like it's, it's not just something that comes out perfectly the first time. A lot of the
Yeah,
times there's a lot that goes into it.
that's so true. And I think Beyonce goes through that a lot. Like, I can't believe there are people who think she can't sing or she's overrated. And I always say it's because she makes it look so easy. People don't realize like
Yeah.
how amazing she is.
I'm gonna be honest. I feel like a lot of people who say she can't sing, it's like closeted racism, or not even closeted. It's just like they're cloaking it in a different word. They just don't
Yeah.
like her for that reason, and then they're just
Mhm.
using a different word. But that's a whole other issue. In looking at, I want to go back to your album too, because in looking at all of these things that we've been talking about, like all of these influences, the not just the songwriting, but the idea of like you're writing this EP that you're then going to end up performing on stage. So like you're putting together effectively, like you said earlier, some of the songs that are a little bit more you can sit with a guitar or one instrument, and then some that are more of like anthems and bigger. I ask this question a lot when I talk to documentarians, and I'm curious about it from the musician's point of view. Like, when do you know you're done with your album? Like, when do you feel like you have all of the right elements, the right number of songs, but also the right configuration, like the right grouping of songs?
When I like when it has replay value,
Hmm.
that's when I know it's done. Like when I want to listen again.
Okay.
Um, those are the songs that I want on it. I guess I'll say, sorry. I just have like this gut feeling when I'm like, this is done. This doesn't need any more. A lot of people, most artists, a lot of artists, not most, will record like 50 songs and choose out of those. I don't have the luxury of doing that because I'm independent and it's expensive to go to the studio and all that. So these songs that you hear on the project are like the only songs that I wrote and recorded for them. Um, so I just had to make sure I was happy with each one so that they were good for this project. And I know I'm happy with it when I'm like, I want to hear that again,
Hmm.
as opposed to like, I wish I would have did that. It's like zero notes and I want to hear it again. That's like when I know I'm happy with the song.
Your zero notes, is that you saying zero notes, or do you actually let other people around you give you notes?
Me, zero notes. I I used to like really care or like think, ask what people think. And I think that's important too, to do that, but like to a certain extent. If I'm happy with it, I'm happy with it. If a friend gives me a note that I'm like, I actually agree with that. I would have never thought of that. I'll take it. But sometimes my friends would be like, oh, I wish this was like that. I'm like, I don't care. Like I like it.
Yeah,
It's mine.
you make a song.
Yeah.
You can do it on your music. Good luck. In terms of like having the replay value that you mentioned a second ago, is there, this might sound a little strange, but is there a time where you say like enough, that's enough, in the sense of you don't want to hear your music over and over again? Like, there are a lot of actors I talk to that like never watch themselves on screen, but I feel like you don't have, I mean, you have to listen to it in order to tweak it and to like know that it's ready. But do you get to points where you're just like, okay, I can't hear that song anymore? And like, what happens when you do? Because like, it doesn't mean it's a bad song. It just means like maybe you listen to it a
Too
ton.
much, too many times. Yeah, that happens a lot, especially like in the creative process because you have to listen to it a lot to give notes to the person mixing it, to give notes to your producer. I have an issue like when it's done and I really like it, I'll just like listen over and over. And I'm like, is this narcissistic? But no, but I'm like appreciating like the work that we all put into it. But there does come a point where it's like not exciting anymore.
Mm.
And I always kick myself. I'm like, dang it, I listened to it too much. Like, how can a song I used to like love listening to, that's my work, now be like almost boring because I just like beat it into the ground. So I'm trying to find the balance of that. And with this project, like, yeah, I started doing that and I was like, I have to stop listening to this so that I could still appreciate it later. So I haven't listened in a while, but there
Yeah.
definitely is a point where it's like I've listened too much.
Maybe in different stages, right? Like you listened to it while you were working on it. And then if you just said like you stopped, well, if you put it away for a little while, now if you listen to it when you live perform it, I
Hmm.
think you'll hear like I wouldn't use the word boring for any live performance because even if you don't like the music or you're tired of your own thing, like the vibe in the room is new. So I
Yeah,
feel like it'll probably give you something. I hope it'll give you something
for
new
sure.
to
You're
love
so
again.
right. Yeah.
Do you come to points at all in terms of like putting the EP away where you after it's done and it's out, do you feel like you use it as, and maybe it's too early to ask this, but like do you feel like you'll use it as fuel for the next one, like to top yourself, or is that also maybe like a road is that's dangerous to go down?
No, I think every artist wants to be better the next time, top themselves and compete with themselves. I think that's the trick. That's something I learned from Beyonce as well. She was like, I don't compete with anybody. I don't have competition. My competition is myself. She's like always trying to outdo herself. And that's why she's still Beyonce from 1997 to 2024, because it's so exciting to see someone like keep outdoing themselves for decades.
Yeah.
So definitely we'll use that as fuel to top myself for the next time around. Yeah.
I mean, you mentioned obviously at the start of this conversation, you started listening to her when you were very, very young. If
Mhm.
there are young kids that like pick up your EP, like, and that you become their influence, like, what is the thing you hope that they are influenced the most by?
Vocal ability, because that is what drew me to my earliest influences. So it would be really cool to like have younger singers be like, wow, like I love the way you did that. Like we call it shedding when you
Mm.
mimic something. That's like a musician term. Um, that'd be so cool for someone to be like, I shed this EP, like, and now like I sing this way based off of like how you sang. Like that'd be so cool.
Yeah. Also, I love that you just taught me that word because now I'm going to sound like I know a little bit about what I'm talking about when I talk about music. Not a
Yeah,
lot, but a
shedding,
little.
like
What
practice.
else can I learn? What other words do I need to know? Because honestly, I'm always like even earlier when I was asking questions about like the actual music style, I'm like, do I use the word tempo here? Is that right? No, probably not. Like I wish I had an ear for anything. I will say, like speaking of like kids, one of the reasons I asked that question is because like when I was really young, I listened to some artists that I knew I could never match, like Mariah Carey. Like I can't no, who can sing like Mariah Carey? Very few people. So I was not trying, but my parents were like, "Oh, maybe you should learn an instrument, maybe that would help," right? And so they put you in, well, I went to public school, so they put us in like band or keyboards because we couldn't afford pianos, and I couldn't do it. I just had no ear for anything. So
How old were you?
now I'm always like, well, I feel like if I had had that education, like kept up with it, it would be a different situation now. And so like I hope kids are picking this stuff up, and like learning from things that are different and cool. And like even if they don't have all the tools that they can find. I mean, it's probably a lot easier now to find some of the tools like online.
YouTube University, yeah.
Exactly. Speaking of the internet, not YouTube specifically, I'm gonna make you choose your favorites. This is something I've been doing with people recently. Um, people who, this is gonna sound stupid because who is a new fan? Everybody knows Beyonce, but for newer fans of Beyonce and Bruno Mars, tell us the one song from each of them that you say they absolutely have to listen to because it's so important to you.
Oh, okay. Wow. Can't believe you're doing this to me, Danielle.
I know everybody hates this question, by the way, and that's why I do it because I think it's fun.
Okay, I'll just say the one that's on the top of my brain, Resentment by Beyonce, but specifically the live performance
Mm.
she did in Vegas at the Win, I think it's called. Um, that was just like insane vocal performance. And Bruno Mars, dang, this is hard. Talking to the Moon was like the first song. I was like, wow, like I fell in love with. I feel like he has so many better songs now, but I'm just trying to stick to my roots.
Yeah,
Like,
it's fair. It can be a totally a personal choice. It doesn't have to be
yeah,
like the mainstream most acclaimed.
yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna make you do this with your music too. Can you pick a favorite song off the EP that if you're like people only have time to listen to one to sample, what should it be?
Twist, twist, because I think that's my favorite vocal performance. I think I did a good job at like emoting, singing the feelings. Um, my producer was really
Sorry.
like,
I was not intending to have it start playing, but I was gonna do it at the end, so I was
come
queuing it
on,
up.
plug.
I'll have to edit it in later because apparently I can't use technology today. All right, go ahead.
Yeah, that was a very well vocally produced track.
Yeah.
I didn't vocally produce myself. My producer was like, do it this way, and like he was great. So that's the one I would tell people to listen to.
And speaking of that as well, I made it kind of a joke earlier about like no one really buys music anymore. It's maybe not true. I don't really know, but because I always leave my guests, my listeners with where to find the stuff that we've talked about. Where would you like them to get your EP? Because I know there's lots of options for where they can. What is your
Yeah,
platform of choice?
Spotify,
Okay.
Spotify.
Awesome. Well, thank you for coming on today and for chatting. And of course, everyone listen to him. Go get it on Spotify. And hey, I'm sure you all have Spotify accounts already, so that makes it nice and easy. And then if you want to listen to Beyonce and or Bruno Mars, they're available where music is available. So Spotify also, Amazon Music, Apple Music, none of these platforms are paying me, so I don't really care where you go. So enjoy, fall in love with them if you haven't already. And thank you all for listening.
Thanks, Danielle. Thanks for having me.